Yo, what's going on, y'all? This is Marcus Rosa, a.k.a. Mazuma TV, back at y'all with some more boxing talk, man. I hope everybody's having a blessed, beautiful, positive, productive day. I'm just chilling in this beautiful studio. My guy, George, in the background. What's going on, brother? We in here about to talk about what's currently going on in the sport of boxing, man. We're going to be pretty much speaking on things that have currently been spoken about in previous lives, but we just going to turn it up a little bit, man. We're going to be speaking about, the keys to victory for Keith Thurman versus Sebastian Fundora. On the live last night, we were pretty much speaking about who has the better attributes in terms of chin, speed, durability, adaptability. We was over here just breaking down the fighters and who edges what in what category. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to speak about the keys to victory for both guys. We're going to try to keep this as objective as possible. Then we're also going to be speaking about the fight that we've all been clamoring for. We're going to be speaking about Xander Zayas, Jaron, Ennis. You know what I mean? We're going to continue to push that fight because as boxing fans, that is the fight that we want. You know what I'm saying? We want that Puerto Rico versus Philly. I guess that's what you want to call it, type situation. That'll be a huge fight for the 154-pound division. So as a boxing fan, as somebody who wants to continue to push the boxing culture forward, we're going to continue to push that fight and speak about it. You know what I'm saying? But shout out to everybody that's in the building thus far. If y'all could go ahead and hit the like button on the way in, that'd be very much appreciated. We on the road to 4K. We well into the 3,400 mark, looking to get into that 3,500 mark in due time. Shout out to the nation and the mob for making this possible. You see what I'm saying? Big fight coming up. You know what I mean? It's not a fight that we've necessarily been looking for or asking for, but nonetheless, it's going down. Sebastian Fundora, who's currently the WBC junior middleweight champion of the world, is going to be going up against Keith one-time Thurman, somebody who was a former unified champion in the welterweight division at a very big I'm not going to say like a big era in the welterweight division, but a strong era, meaning there was a lot of credible names at the time that Keith Thurman rose to the top of the division. You had Sean Porter, who he came out victorious against. You had Danny Garcia. You know what I'm saying? You had Robert Guerrero around doing this thing. You had Errol Spence that was on the come up. You had Terrence Crawford making his way into the division as well. Keith Thurman was able to rise to the top of that division, but unfortunately he did run into some, health issues, I guess, injuries continued to pile up, and he was plagued with, inactivity as a result of that, man. And when I was looking through his box track, I seen that since 2019, he's had 2 fights. So I'm like, damn, man, that's a whole lot of sitting, waiting around. And he's going up against Sebastian Fundora, who is coming off of an injury himself, but has maintained the level of activity that Keith Thurman hasn't seen in years. You see what I'm saying? Shout out to the boy Des 215 in the building. What's going on, brother? So, this is a really good fight. Keith Thurman, I seen people making, their case for why, he won't struggle to be at 154 pounds. He competed at 152 in the amateurs. He said early on in his career, he fought at 154. But one thing we can't dispute, regardless of the situation, is that he was a career-long welterweight. And although he may have started his career at 154, it wasn't at an elite level. It wasn't against notable opposition. So you basically starting from scratch. You see what I'm saying? And you going up against somebody who has a huge advantage in the 154-pound weight class. Like when we're looking at the average guy at, junior middleweight, you're talking about guys who are 5'10", between 5'10" to 6'1" in the division. You know what I'm saying? Like you got Jaron Ennis, who may be 5'10", 5'11". Xander Zayas, who may be 5'11", around that area. Jamel Charlo, who may be around 5'11", 6 foot himself. Those are the average, height of these guys. Sebastian Fundora is 6'5" to 6'6". I've even seen photos of him with Deontay Wilder where they look like they were the same height, and Wilder's listed as 6'7". You see what I'm saying? Josue Hernandez, what's going on, brother? What's going on? What's going on? How we feeling? Blaze, pound for pound. What up? Talk to me, man. How we feeling? Glad y'all coming through and supporting us. So Keith Thurman is somebody who's probably 5'8" on a good day. Is going to have some trials and tribulations dealing with the height of Sebastian Fundora. But Sebastian Fundora, which may even work in Keith Thurman's favor, he doesn't necessarily fight like a tall fighter. I've seen him use his range a little bit more in his previous fight with Tim Tszyu, but for the most part, he likes to fight on the inside, man. He likes to be the aggressor. The aggressor. He likes to put the pressure. He likes to let his hands go. And usually the most vulnerable fighters on the defensive aspect of the guys who are taking chances, letting their hands go and things of that nature. So there's definitely going to be some opportunities for Keith Thurman, but I think it's safe to say that Keith Thurman has yet to face anybody like this in his career. I've seen that he's been very confident with the sparring that he's been getting. You know, he was sparring Mike Fox. Shout out to Mike Fox. He's been on the channel before for interviews. And then I don't think he mentioned the heavyweight that he was sparring, but he said it was a 6'6" heavyweight who was a volume type guy. So he's confident in his preparation. I'm precisely what's going on, brother. He's very confident in his preparation. So, you know, I ain't gonna lie, man. At first, when the fight first got announced, I was rooting really heavy for Sebastian Fundora. Not necessarily, I'm not gonna say rooting for him, but I thought that it was gonna be a washing. You know what I'm saying? But when I'm studying the Sebastian Fundora film, I'm seeing more and more opportunities. I'm seeing holes in Sebastian Fundora's game that makes me feel like Keith Thurman could take advantage of it. And when we're going through this chart, you know, last night when we was going over these guys' physical, you know, attributes, their abilities, Keith Thurman has a significant advantage in a lot of these categories. You see what I'm saying? So I think like Keith Thurman had like 9 categories that went his way, and then like Sebastian Fundora had like 5. So it's a significant difference in skill set between the two. Sebastian Fundora is building his own experience in the weight class, but I do think that Keith Thurman has faced a better opposition. I know it's at a different weight class, and experience doesn't necessarily always get the job done, but it does give guys like me who, you know, break these fights down a little bit more reassurance that this may be more competitive than people may, you know, talk about. You know what I'm saying? I'm precisely say, yeah, I got Fundora beating Thurman. I mean, that's a strong possibility, and I think that he's the favorite for a reason. I think Fundora has a lot of things going his way. You're talking about momentum. You're talking about youth. You're talking about activity. You're talking about height. You're talking about reach. You see what I'm saying? And Keith Thurman in the past has had trouble with dudes with that were active, you know what I mean, that were pressure fighters. Like that Sean Porter fight was a tough outing for Keith Thurman. He came out victorious, but that was a tough outing. And we see Keith Thurman get hurt to the head. We seen him get hurt to the body. We seen him get knocked down. We have not seen him get stopped. But he has went through some adversity in his time as a boxer. You know what I'm saying? So who's to say Sebastian Fundora couldn't do that to him? But at the same time, we see Sebastian Fundora get dropped. We see Sebastian Fundora be hurt in the ring. We seen him get knocked out. We seen him hit the canvas and refuse to get up after the Brian Mendoza fight. So who's to say that Keith Thurman can't hurt him? I know, I'm obviously I've never been hit by Keith Thurman. But one thing I do know is that he could definitely crack. They called him one time for a reason. And he hasn't gotten a knockout in a long time, you know, at an elite level. You know, a lot of his fights went the distance when he fought, you know, solid opposition. So, you know, a lot of people may be asking, like, okay, so what's the probability that he'll stop Fondora? Because he didn't stop Danny. He didn't stop Sean Porter. But what a lot of people don't take into consideration is that at the time that Keith Thurman fought those guys, they didn't get stopped neither. They never been stopped. You know, Danny Garcia didn't get stopped until he faced Aries Landy Lara at a middleweight, and then Sean Porter didn't get stopped until he ran into a prime Terrence Crawford, who stopped everybody at welterweight during his tenure in the division. So, yeah, Blaze pound for pound says my major concern is Thurman's inactivity. I think that's everybody's main concern. I think that's everybody's main concern. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like I said, 2 fights in 7 years. It's like you damn near retired. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely a huge concern. But, you know, Keith, I'm seeing he done been through a handful of surgeries as well. So he's also injury prone. So who's to say that he's going to come into this fight anywhere near 100%? We don't know that. You see what I mean? Elbow surgery, bicep surgery. You know, he had gotten in a car accident prior to the Sean Porter fight, had whiplash. And, you know, Keith Thurman done been through some things, man. He done really been through some things during his time as a fighter, and that could be his body just breaking down. He's 37 years old. But I'm not about to sit here and act like Sebastian Fundora is like this unstoppable force. That's not the case at all. Sebastian Fundora is very beatable. You know what I'm saying? And I think his team understands that, which is why they've been very cautious and calculated with the fights that he's been taking since becoming world champion. Like, we're not about to sit here and act like he didn't give up his world title to not fight Xander Zayas. We're not about to sit here and act like injury rumors wasn't fabricated in order to not face Terrence Crawford. Like, So Samson Lukowicz said that Sebastian Fundora had a handful of injuries, whatever the case is, and Sebastian Fundora came out and said that he didn't have those injuries. I remember this clear as day. But that was just so they wouldn't face Terrence Crawford, who at the time was destroying PBC fighters. So I get it. So what's my whole take on the situation, man? I think that this is a closer fight than a lot of people are giving credit for. I do think that although Keith Thurman may very possibly lose in this fight against Sebastian Fundora, he may very well get his ass whooped. I think that Keith Thurman has a better chance than what people are making it seem right now. And I ain't gonna lie, like something just tells me that Thurman's going to have some moments in this fight. And those moments may lead to him having a victory. And I ain't going to lie, I put a little bet on the fight, man. I put a little bet on the fight. Plus 600 for Keith Thurman to get the knockout. When Fondora has been knocked out before, he gets hit a lot. He's not elusive defensively whatsoever. You telling me that's the guy that these platforms like FanDuel and all that, they feel like he isn't going to get stopped in this fight? Oh, yeah, I'm taking that every day. $40 get you $240. Why would I not take that chance? So, I ain't going to lie. I'm rooting for Keith Thurman to get this done, man. And, I could really care less for either one of these guys because I've been heavily critical of both. But we're hearing Sebastian Fundora at the height of his powers right now talk about how he doesn't really care to be undisputed. That these sanctioning bodies, don't want to work with him, so he doesn't want to work with them. And it's like, what do you, I still, don't, to this day, I don't understand what he means by that. What do you mean these sanctioning bodies have to work with you? They have to be on your time? Bro, you do understand that with championship belts comes responsibilities, a.k.a. mandatories. And you're making it seem like these mandatories that they're ordering, which Xander Zayas was at one point, which is why he gave up his belt, like that's like mandatory. Like you just can't grab a belt and then say, you guys got to work with me, blah, blah, blah. This ain't going to happen. Like, come on, man. Let's be serious. Let's be for real. You not bigger than the belt, brother. Like Floyd Mayweather, he got to a point where he was bigger than the belt. Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez, even Terrence Crawford before he walked away. They became bigger than the belt. You're not one of them, brother. You have a whole lot to prove. You still have yet to fight somebody who, in my opinion, was in their prime. I don't believe you beat a prime Erickson Lubin. I don't believe that you beat you fought Tim Tszyu, but Tim Tszyu ain't really beat nobody notable. He was doing the same thing as y'all, taking cautious, calculated fights against guys who, weren't at their peak when they fought him. So it is what it is, man. Bella Faith in the building. What's going on? She said Sanchez versus Torres, Frank Sanchez versus Richard Torres, and Yo-Yo versus Goucher. I like this card. I like it too. You know what I mean? Frank Sanchez versus Richard Torres, very, very interesting fight. Very interesting fight. Richard Torres proved me wrong with that Guido Vianello fight that one time, man. I thought Guido was going to beat him, man, but he mauled him. He put pressure on him. He let his hands go. He displayed a lot of heart. He displayed great conditioning. And if Frank Sanchez is slipping, if he's not on his game, he's going to have a tough time with Richard Torres as well. You're going to have to, for somebody like Richard Torres, he's like in my opinion, he reminds me of like a heavyweight Sean Porter. You know what I'm saying? They got the athleticism, they got the explosiveness, almost got like that football player type vibe to them where they just swarm you with combinations and they want you to feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like Richard Torres, like Floyd Schofield, Sean Porter, they like cut from the same cloth in my opinion. You see what I'm saying? So Frank Sanchez got to be ready for that. Hopefully he working on his timing, his counter punching real well, keeping Richard Torres at a distance, and if necessary, he got to be ready to let his hands go throughout the fight because Richard Torres is going to be putting them hands together. You know what I mean? And if you're not able to keep up from a cardio aspect, you might get drowned. So that's a great fight overall. That's 2-5. And then Yo-Yo versus Goucher. Shout out to Terrell Goucher. He literally wants smoke with everybody. He don't turn down no fades. You got to respect somebody like Terrell Goucher, man. So you facing Yo-Yo, who is one of the most dangerous fighters in the middleweight division, despite having minimal fights. Very dangerous. This dude, he may very well be the future of the middleweight division, depending on who ends up stepping into it. But Yo-Yo is definitely a problem, and Terrell's rolling the dice, so salute to him. Des215 said the WBC protects them. They are both fighting for protection at this point. I agree, Des. I think that's a great point, man. And during that interview where Sebastian Fundora said he wasn't interested in being undisputed because of the politics, he says the WBC, he's comfortable with them. You know, they take care of him, a.k.a. they let him do whatever he wants as long as he's paying a sanctioning fee. You know what I'm saying? Keith Thurman, we seen him at the height of his powers at welterweight act like fighters like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford were nobodies, that they were below him. You know, pretty much trying to make them wait their turn, trying to flex on them. And then when the tables turned and Crawford and Spence became the men of the division, all of a sudden Keith Thurman begging for an opportunity. So, you know, I pay attention to patterns. I'm one of those type people that believe that once they show you who they are the first time, you know, you got to believe them. And I think Keith Thurman, although I am rooting for him, I do feel like if he were to capture that WBC belt, you know, he's not going to be giving the fans the fights that he wants. He's not going to be giving the fans the fights that they want either. I think he's going to keep it over on the PBC side. You know, we might see, if Keith Thurman come out victorious, he may very well face a Jermell Charlo. You know what I'm saying? Who, you know, is coming off of inactivity as well. Somebody who hasn't fought since getting his ass whooped by Canelo Alvarez at 168. You know, that's who we're going to see get an opportunity instead of guys like, you know, Jaron Ennis, who is heavily pursuing becoming undisputed in the junior middleweight division. That's what we may very well see. So it is what it is. But I want to get into the keys to victory for Keith Thurman and Sebastian Fundora. You know what I mean? Talk a little bit about Xander Zayas versus Boost, and then we're going to be up out of here, man. So I got 3 keys to victory for each one of these guys. And I think that if they pursue this consistently throughout the fights, I think it's their fight to win. Let's start with Sebastian Fundora, right? Sebastian Fundora isn't like this multi-dimensional fighter. He's actually one-dimensional when you really think about it. He is getting better. He's starting to understand the gifts that God gave him in terms of his reach, and we're seeing him keeping, you know, using his straight shots a little bit more, keeping guys at the end of his punches. I want to see him do that. I think that's gonna be my first key to victory for Sebastian Fundora. We got to see him use his range more. Sebastian Fundora cannot allow Keith Thurman to have any type of you know, big shots landing on him. You know what I'm saying? You want to keep Keith Thurman at the end of your punches so Keith Thurman has a tough time, you know, dropping them bombs on you. You see what I'm saying? So I want to see Sebastian Fundora, you know, keep him at the end of his shots. I think as long as because he has a significant reach advantage. Like Keith Thurman may have like a 68-inch reach advantage. I'm not sure, 67, 68, because he has like 5'7", 5'8". Sebastian Fundora has an 80-inch reach, bro. That what is that, like a 6'6"? No, that's like a 6'8" reach. You have a 6'8" reach, man. Your reach is literally taller than Keith Thurman in itself. So you should definitely be using that. Not saying not to be yourself, but definitely keep him at the end of your shots. As long as you're doing that, Keith Thurman is going to have a hard time getting his offense off, man. And he's going to be more on the defense than the offense, and that's exactly what you want if you're Sebastian Fundora. Another key, and I think that this is very important. I think he has to he has to be volume-based in this fight. Just like how he has been in his previous fights and stuff like that. I don't think he can really sit back and afford to play chess with somebody like Keith Thurman. That's just something that I don't see Sebastian Fundora doing well with somebody like Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman is the more intelligent fighter. So I think he needs to be volume-based. I think he should keep his range, but at the same time, he shouldn't give Keith Thurman much room to breathe. I think as long as he's keeping that pressure, you know what I mean, letting his hands go, you know, relentlessly, I think it's eventually going to slow down Keith Thurman and break him down. You see what I'm saying? Keith Thurman and Sebastian Fundora is somebody who isn't the most defensively responsible anyway, so it's not like he isn't going to get hit, but at the same time, so I think we can all acknowledge that Fundora is going to get hit throughout the fight, but I think that he needs to keep Keith Thurman on the defense as much as possible. How are you going to do that? By letting your hands go more than him. You have to outwork Keith Thurman. You see what I mean? Of course, Keith Thurman doesn't really like body attack and stuff like that. So if you are able to attack that body while you got him against the ropes or whatever the case is, you'll be good to go. Now, the third key to victory that I want to see from Sebastian Fundora is you want to take the legs from Keith Thurman. So basically what I was just saying. So the first key, you want to keep him at the end of your punches. The second key, you want to punch in combinations. You want to be volume based. But one of Keith Thurman's biggest assets in that ring is his legs. And what you want to do is take away his best ability. How are you going to be able to take his legs, man? You're going to have to go to his body, man. And I know that may be very risky because Keith Thurman, you may be coming down to Keith Thurman's level while you're shooting these body shots, but it is what it is. With them tall, with those rangy, straight shots that you have, you should definitely be looking to play some of those straight shots to the body. The more you go to Keith Thurman's body, the more success you'll have. If you're able to get Keith Thurman to be a sitting duck, you're going to have a lot of success because Keith Thurman isn't somebody who could sit in a pocket and really make you miss. You can tell that Keith Thurman's legs is a big part of why he's defensively responsible. You don't really see Keith Thurman catching shots with the high guard. You don't really see him being elusive like a Carlos Adames or a 160 Canelo Alvarez or a Wilfred Benitez. He's not built like that. You know what I mean? He's kind of like Devin Haney in a way where, his legs are what gets him out of the way. You know what I mean? Gets him out of getting hit with big shots and stuff like that. You take the legs away from him, you make him a sitting duck, that fight is for you to win in spectacular, brutal fashion. You know what I'm saying? So the three keys to victory for Sebastian Fundora, off the top, I didn't even write this down, anything of that nature. You want to keep him at the end of your punches so he doesn't get a good gauge of distance and, he'll have trouble establishing his offense. You want to be volume-based because you don't want Keith Thurman to have any chance of breathing in there. You know what I'm saying? You want to overwhelm him with volume. Then, of course, you gotta chop Keith Thurman's body. Historically, he has trouble with body shots, and based off of his legs being one of the biggest weapons in his arsenal, you want to take that away from him. Shout out to Bella Faith in the building. She said, Fondora's defense is not good at all, but that 80-inch reach is going to be difficult for Thurman to navigate. Yeah, and I think that's something that Keith Thurman has acknowledged, himself, and I think that's why he's gotten the sparring partners that he's had. You know what I mean? He's had the Mike Foxes who, isn't as tall as Sebastian Fundora, but he's very rangy. Like Mike Fox has to be 6'4", I guess you would say. So only a little shorter than Sebastian Fundora. But what helps is that he's a southpaw just like Sebastian. And Mike Fox is always in great shape. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the exact style of a Sebastian Fundora, but he does come in great shape. And I'm sure that if, told to, he would definitely let his hands go. Like Mike Fox definitely lives the lifestyle. And, I think he brought that volume puncher heavyweight to deal with, the aggressiveness of Sebastian Fundora. So he seems to be confident in his preparation. So we'll see. Now, let's transition on to the three keys of victory for Keith Thurman. You know what I'm saying? I do think that Keith Thurman is the more intelligent fighter. I think he's more versatile than Sebastian Fundora. But I do think he needs to bring a little bit of everything into this fight. I think there's going to be times where Keith Thurman may need to be the aggressor. You know what I mean? Explode. You want to close the gap against Sebastian Fundora, explode with combinations. And you also want to be on the back foot, too, because there's going to be times where Sebastian Fundora is going to be looking to turn up and put them punches together on you. So first key to victory for Keith Thurman is you want to make Sebastian Fundora pay for his defensive flaws. So your counterpunching definitely has to be on a beam. Not only that, you need to counter in combinations because Sebastian Fundora, although we did see him get knocked out by Brian Mendoza, it was punishment that led up to that knockout happening. You know what I mean? You have to put those punches together, man. It took Mendoza a few rounds to land that kill shot on Fundora. So Keith Thurman, who's coming up from a smaller division, may have to do a little bit more in order to get that job done. So one thing I'm going to say is that when Sebastian Fundora, overextends on a shot or he's not bringing his hands back, because I have seen, times where Sebastian Fundora's lead hand may be down while he's throwing the left hand or, he doesn't bring his jab hand back, on time. Keith Thurman has to notice these things. And as soon as Sebastian Fundora overcommits, you want to land that big punch, but you also want to add punches to that. That first shot may not, phase Sebastian Fundora, but the second and third he might not be able to see, and then you may get some things going. You know what I'm saying? Another thing for Keith Thurman, you definitely want to run. You want to use your legs to create those counter punching opportunities. So you want to counter in combinations, and then you want to use your legs to set up those counters. So your legs, Keith Thurman's legs is going to be a big part of his game Saturday night, in my opinion. You definitely want to get him some side-to-side movement. You know, when Sebastian Fundora is off balance, that's when, you know, you have to. So let's just say this. You counter in combinations. Counter in combinations. Second one, you want to throw him off with your side-to-side movement. Side-to-side movement is going to be the key. It's going to be one of the keys to victory, because as long as Sebastian Fundora feet isn't planted, he won't be in position to punch. Sebastian Fundora is not one of those guys that could punch off of the move. I've never seen that, unless he just has that and he's never had to show it. I've never seen Sebastian Fundora in a situation where he's light on the feet. You know what I'm saying? And off the bounce, he's coming off of 1, 2, 3 punch combinations. We just don't see that. Sebastian Fundora's feet have to be settled before he punches. As long as you keep his feet moving, you're not going to be in that much of a danger. So hopefully Keith Thurman has conditioned those legs real well, because he's going to need to use them. And those are 37-year-old legs, so hopefully they last for 36 minutes if need be. So definitely want to get some side-to-side movement. Counter combinations, side-to-side movement. And Keith Thurman, he's going to have to his inside game is definitely going to play a role as well. You know what I'm saying? Keith Thurman, you definitely going to have to land. You're going to have to load up on them punches on the inside. That's just what I'm going to tell you. And the reason why I say that is because there are going to be moments where Sebastian may trap you on the ropes and things of that nature. You are going to have to get your respect on the inside. So Keith Thurman, we seen it in the Sean Porter fight when Sean Porter was swarming him and, trying to get those big shots off. Keith was countering in between the shots, and he was able to effectively get the better of those exchanges. And not only that, but even hurt Sean Porter a couple times throughout the fight. So we got to see that side of Keith Thurman. We got to see that one time where Sebastian Fundora may be looking to, bomb off on Thurman, and right when he tries to get a shot off, Keith Thurman loads up on a big, left hook. You know what I'm saying? Left hook, right hand, the uppercuts, whatever the case is. And I do think that Keith Thurman has a lot of creativity offensively where he could set up a combination that Fondora may not see. And I really think that Keith Thurman could hurt this dude. So 3 keys to victory off of the top. We want to see Keith Thurman counter in combinations. We want to see him. And the reason why we want to counter in combinations is because, one shot may not phase somebody like Fondora, but 2, 3, 4 punch combinations may be able to break down Fondora, make him second guess or even put him on the canvas. Side-to-side movement, because as long as Sebastian Fondora's feet are moving, he's not going to be in a great position to get any of those big, significant power shots off on you. Then the third one, what was the third one? You want to get those big power shots off on the inside. So power shots on the inside is definitely going to be something that you're going to need to do. You know what I'm saying? Counter punching, movement, inside work, a little bit of everything. You're going to have to, Keith is going to have to pull all his tools out for this fight. One way is not going to work, because Sebastian Fundora is experienced enough to, neutralize that one approach. So then what? So Keith Thurman has to have a healthy balance between counter punching, exchanging on the inside, I guess you would say, and giving some side-to-side movement. So I'm excited for the fight. I ain't gonna lie. This was a fight that I didn't really care for too much, but seeing Keith Thurman prepare, seeing how excited he is and how confident he is, which, Keith Thurman's never really too unconfident. We never really seen Thurman not confident in a fight, but he's giving me some optimism, man, and we might actually see an upset Saturday night. I know a lot of people are picking Fondora. They have their reasons. And look, I'm not mad at it, because a lot of the time when Sebastian Fundora fights, solid guys, he rises to the occasion. But Sebastian Fundora does have a tendency of being inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, fights early on in his career where I thought, he had fought this dude named, what was his name? Javante Clark or something like that. I probably got his name wrong. But I know for sure his last name was Clark. I thought Fondora lost that fight. But then I seen him fight guys like Nathaniel Gallimore, if I said his first name correct, but he fought Gallimore. beat Gallimore up, man. Then I seen him fight Erickson Lubin, and he faced adversity heavy in that fight. He was able to pull it off. It seems like when credible opposition is in front of Sebastian Fundora, he turns it up. But when there's guys that, he may not feel like is a big name, he seems to have a tough time. Brian Mendoza, you see what I'm saying? Man, he may have looked at him as like a gatekeeper at 154 and, very much paid the price. And I never seen him get his get back for that fight either. So it is what it is. Those are my 3 keys to victory for Keith Thurman and Sebastian Fundora. I'm looking forward to seeing that fight. Richard Torres, Frank Sanchez, that's a great fight as well, along with Yo-Yo versus Terrell Goucher. So it's on, it's lit, it's popping Saturday night, and I'm really looking forward to watching and enjoying this fight with y'all, man. Is there any comments in the building? Let me see. Is there any comments in the building? No comments in the building. So we're going to go ahead and transition on to the next topic. We're going to go ahead and transition to the next topic, man, and we're going to be speaking about Jaron Ennis versus Xander Zayas. And, I've been talking about this fight nonstop ever since. I was speaking about this fight a month ago when they banned your boy. When they banned your boy from going live for like a week, I was in the studio with my guys Ray and my guy Slime, and I was telling y'all that since Virgil was doing that, having that legal situation with Oscar De La Hoya and that, we shouldn't even be talking about that fight no more, because I've seen fighters deal with being in court and, it may take months or up to a year, more than a year. Like, I've seen this happen. Andre Ward, Mikey Garcia. Like, I've seen these unfortunate events happen time and time again. So just based off of them going back and forth in court, I knew that Virgil and Boots just wasn't going to be the next fight. They may fight, but it's not going to be the next fight. So once I saw that Xander Zayas beat Abbas Barau and, he was out here with some type of availability, and I seen that Jaron Ennis was ranked. I mean, he had the WBA interim belt, and Xander Zayas had the WBA world title. I was like, oh, man, this is a fight that definitely needs to happen. This may be the biggest fight at 154 pounds. I said this well over a month ago, probably closer to 2 months ago now. And now, these guys are both heavily pursuing this fight. This says that Xander Zayas is the one that's driving these negotiations. This is the fight that he wants. And I ain't going to lie, man, that boy Xander Zayas got a hella lot of cojones for taking on somebody, or at least being optimistic and taking on somebody like Jaron Ennis, because he could very easily flex on Jaron Ennis. Like I've stated previously, he could just be like, Boo's got to earn his way. He's not a champion. What has he done? He may be just, we'll look at him as a duck, but he would be justified in saying it because Boots really isn't in a position to really call any shots at 154 right now. So the fact that Xander Zayas is willing to take on this opportunity where Boots may very well take the throne off of him. But Fanuel, what up? You got to give Xander Zayas all the credit in the world, man. But I'm hearing them people in Puerto Rico speak, man. I'm hearing them people in Puerto Rico doing these podcasts. They are absolutely shook of Xander Zayas facing Jaron Ennis, man. I wish I had the video right in front of me, but I don't have it. I ain't going to lie to you. I don't have it. But they sent it in the group chat. Shout out to the Nation group chat. And there's people that are going as far to say as, if Xander beats Jaron Ennis, I'm quitting this podcast. Like, that's how much people are really doubting Xander Zayas' abilities in facing Jaron Ennis. And I ain't gonna lie, like, I can understand why, these guys are saying that. They feel like Xander Zayas needs more time. And basically, they want to say, like, he still needs his hand held. But this is the reality of the situation, man. Xander Zayas is a unified champion in one of the deepest divisions in the sport of boxing. There is no more holding hands, yo. If he had an interim belt, if he had a regular title, if he had a youth title, all right, you may have a case in, saying that. But when you hold the legit world titles, not no interim, no WBO Latino, the WBC People's Champ, when you have legit world titles on your waist, there is no way you can sit here and say that he's not ready for the best competition. Xander Zayas knew what it was as soon as he won his first world title. Now he has 2. So now you have to step. You see what I mean? Bella Faith said Boots versus Zayas is a banger. Does the fight happen in the States or PR? I think this is pretty obvious, like Bethaniel just said. I do think that it's a no-brainer that this fight happens in New York. I don't really understand why. Like, if it happens in Puerto Rico, that's just solely based off of Xander Zayas' ego. You know what I'm saying? Blaze Pound for Pound said, do you think the zone is forcing the Xander versus Boots fight? Listen, man, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. I think that when the zone signed Top Rank to that deal, I think that was something that was already like on their minds or had previously discussed. And even though Top Rank may not want that at this very point in time, you know, they may want a network deal. So, you know, that was something that they was looking for and shopping for a very long time. The zone was able to give that to them, but there may have been some conditions that were set in place prior to them being signed that they had to agree to before they had the network deal done. And maybe Boots versus Zayas is one of the things that was at the top of their list. I think the zone has had enough. I think the zone is at a point where it's like, all right, yo, like we giving these promoters these budgets and they keep giving us, you know, fights that, you know, we aren't satisfied with and our subscriptions aren't going up. You see what I'm saying? So, no, I'm not going to give you we're not going to give you millions and millions of dollars for you to give us, you know, lackluster fights. If we're going to be giving you money, because we done lost a whole lot by now. If I'm going to be giving you all this, if I'm going to be giving you this bankroll, you're going to be giving us the fights that we want. You see what I mean? So I just think that that's the zone putting their foot down. And I like the fact that they're doing that. You know what I'm saying? Because the zone done been around like, what, 10 years? A decade, maybe? Probably a little long, probably more or less a decade. You know, they solidified themselves. You know what I'm saying? They are a influential figure in the sport of boxing. They're arguably the biggest network for boxing today. You know what I mean? It might be unanimous, to be honest with you. They're the biggest network in boxing today. They're the ones who, you know, have continued to invest in the boxing when everybody else walked away, like HBO, Showtime, and all that good stuff. So they like, man, you know, enough is enough. You know, we done gave y'all plenty of time to use our money to give us bullshit product. Now you have to give us the real deal. You know what I'm saying? So that's very much a possibility. Like I said, I don't think Top Rank wanted to throw Xander Zayas into that, you know, fire just yet. You know what I mean? Because I think that Top Rank understands, yo, they master matchmakers, man. So, you know, they understand that Boots is a threat to their guy. However, I think they understand that Zayas is 23 years old, so if he were to lose, there's plenty of time for him to come back and reestablish things. If he wins, it'll be very rewarding, and they'll have like their next little Miguel Cotto, Tito Trinidad, whatever the case is. You know, and listen, that's another thing. If Xander loses, they could just go up to 160 and hunt for a world title there. So it is what it is, man. Let's go back to that previous comment. Let me see what Bella Faith said. She said, don't be surprised if Zayas pushes for it in PR. Kelly was cool with the Zayas fight happening in the States, and the fight fell through for some reason. Well, I think it was because Josh Kelly was hell-bent on making the fight happen in the UK. You know what I'm saying? And Xander was like, no, let's do it in Puerto Rico. Like, I'm the unified champion. You know what I mean? Like, I got the belts. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why don't you just come over here? So they definitely had a setting problem. If the fight happens in Puerto Rico, that's solely based off of, you know, the ego of Xander Zayas. The fight makes sense to happen in New York because you got to think about it from both sides. You know, now, like if the fight were to happen in Puerto Rico, it'll just be Xander Zayas people there. There might be a little bit of Boost people in the crowd and stuff like that, but check this out. From a transportation standpoint, it makes a lot more sense because if Xander Zayas is thinking, if he's really thinking, there's a shit ton of Puerto Ricans in Philadelphia. There's a shit ton of Puerto Ricans, you know, in or around the area. New York, Philly, Connecticut, Jersey. They're all over the place. They're all going to come out to see you. Booth's fan base is Philadelphia. He sold what? Well, he had like between 14 and 16,000 people at the Wells Fargo. They're going to go. They fought, if it's around the area, they're going to go support Jaron Ennis. When he fought in Atlantic City, they came out. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Philly and New York is only an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, depending on where you are, more or less. They're going to come out. So, I don't think Xander should just be taking into consideration his fans. He should be taking into consideration Jaron Boots Ennis' fans because the more fans, the more you guys are going to get paid. You want both of your people to show up, to come together, to be a part of a mega event, And I think New York is literally the ideal place. You know what I'm saying? It could be looked at as like a place where there's going to be a lot of Puerto Ricans, but guess what? A lot of black people live in New York too. And black fans do play. Despite, you know, whatever narrative's been put out here, the black boxing fan is one of the most valuable fans to have in your corner. That's a fact. Nathaniel coming through, he said, I believe Team Xander wanted the Kelly fight in PR. It should have been in the UK, bigger crowd, bigger fight. Well, he probably on some type of time where it's like, man, like, we not doing that. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I'm a unified champion. You got one belt. You know what I mean? And like, New York is like a good location too. And one thing about the UK guys is that they travel. Like, I know y'all remember what Ricky Hatton in the UK did. You know, Dalton Smith had people at the Subaru Matias fight. They was out there. So one thing that the UK do is they move a little bit different. They don't mind getting their passport together and traveling over to the US to support their guy. Like, they have zero problem whatsoever getting that done. You know what I'm saying? So New York needs to be the ideal location for Boots and Xander. Let me see. Dust 215 says, yeah, but Xander's not thinking about the fans. He's really thinking about how comfortable it will be fighting at home. I mean, to be honest with you, Dust, we don't know what he's thinking. Like, I haven't seen an interview where he said that he's thinking about how comfortable it will be fighting at home. Like, I never heard him say that personally. But if Xander Zayas, if he's putting comfortability ahead of the business, you will be a fool. You see what I'm saying? And New York could be just as comfortable as Puerto Rico. New York literally has the highest population of Puerto Ricans in the country. You see what I'm saying? Xander lives in Florida. So it's like, and there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in Florida as well. So if he could be comfortable living in Florida where there's a lot of Puerto Ricans, why wouldn't he be comfortable fighting in New York where there's a shit ton of Ricans? And on top of that, Xander Zayas has fought in New York many times. So with you performing at a certain arena multiple times, there's going to be comfortability there. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like Xander's in Philly. Now, Xander's in Philly. He like, nah, what the fuck? Like, he not going to be wanting to do all that, but he's familiar with New York. That's where Top Rank loves to do these PR-based fights at. You see what I'm saying? So, but regardless of the situation, I feel like Boots will fight him anywhere. I feel like Boots would fight him in Puerto Rico. I don't think he would really care about the location. But from a business aspect, it's New York all day. You know what I mean? It's the media capital of the world, from what I understand. It's not too far from Philly. A shit ton of Puerto Ricans going to be traveling from all over. They're already in New York. All they got to do is step out their crib and, you know, little Uber or whatever, and they there. Why not? Why not? And that fight would do crazy numbers. That would be like this would be today's B-Hop Tito Trinidad. You know what I'm saying? That's 215 said, oh, I thought he lived in PR, my bad. No, he's from Florida. I mean, he was born in Puerto Rico, but he lived in Florida. And he still lives, from what I understand, he still lives in Florida to this day. So, yeah, he's familiar with the East Coast. And he fought at Madison Square Garden I don't know how many times. So, you know, if they were to do it again, you know, at MSG or the Barclays, Xander wouldn't be uncomfortable at all. I refuse to believe that. But do we have any last questions before we get up out of here, man? 'Cause I got to go over to the gym. I got to take care of some things. You know what I'm saying? Prior to this, I dropped my son off and all that. Do we have any last questions before we get up out of here? And, of course, I'll be going live tonight, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to continue cooking up on what's going on in the boxing world. You see what I'm saying? Any last questions for y'all, boy? Let me know. If we ain't got nothing, we going to get up out of here. I appreciate my boy George for coming through and showing love, you know what I mean? Bringing me over to the studio. You know what I mean? Zoom out real quick. Let's see the logo. Man, look at that. Come on, man. Absolutely phenomenal in here. And eventually, we going to be doing another live fight commentary here as well, so we definitely going to get that situated. But I'm going to get up out of here, man. I appreciate everybody that came through and show love as always. If y'all could go ahead and hit the like button on the way out, that'd be very much appreciated. Like I said, we on the road to 4K, man. 2027, we need to be at 4K. We on the 3,400 trail, looking to crack that 3,500 mark. You know what I mean? Shout out to the nation and the mob. We in here as always. Shout out to Bella Faith. Shout out to everybody else that contributed to the chat. Shout out to everybody that's been sending super chats as well, man. It does a lot for the channel. You know what I mean? I'll be back at y'all later on. Hope y'all guys have a blessed, beautiful one. I'm up out of here, man. Peace.